The starship UNS Harmony moved through space like a gentle giant. Its white hull reflected the distant stars as it approached the massive space station that housed the Galactic Council. Ambassador Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge, watching the alien structure grow larger on the main screen. She wore her best diplomatic uniform and practiced her patient smile in the reflection of the window. "Another day, another chance to be ignored," Captain Jake Morrison muttered from his command chair. He kept his voice low so only Lisa could hear him. The captain had been escort commander for human diplomatic missions for 5 years now. In all that time, he had watched the aliens treat his people like children who did not understand how the real galaxy worked. Lisa turned to look at Jake. Her smile never changed, but her eyes showed a different story. "Remember why we do this, Captain. Every insult we swallow today makes tomorrow easier." The communications officer, Lieutenant Ben Parker, looked up from his station. "Ambassador, we are getting a signal from the station. They want us to dock at Bay 94. Lisa nodded. Bay 94 was in the worst section of the station. It was where they put ships that nobody important wanted to see. The good docking bays were reserved for the Zephyrian Empire ships and other important species. "Acknowledge the signal, Lieutenant. Tell them we are honored to use whatever bay they choose for us." Jake made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. Honor. That was what humans always said when aliens treated them badly. They acted honored to be treated like dirt. The docking process took 2 hours longer than it should have. The station controllers kept telling the human ship to wait, while more important vessels took priority. Lisa watched through the window as 3 different alien ships cut in front of them. Each one was smaller than the Harmony and carried delegates from species that had joined the galaxy long after humans had arrived. When they finally docked, Lisa led her small team through the station corridors. The walls were covered with symbols and writing from a dozen different alien cultures. There was no human writing anywhere. After 50 years of membership in the Galactic Council, humans were still treated like visitors who might leave at any time. The meeting room was cold and smelled like the chemicals that Vorthak aliens breathed. Lisa took her seat at the small table marked for minor species representatives. Around the room, the important aliens sat at a large circular table raised above the floor. They looked down at the smaller tables where humans and other young species had to sit. High Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian Empire spoke first. His voice came through a translator device that made him sound bored. "The human delegation may now present their complaints about recent trade disputes." Lisa stood up slowly. She had practiced this speech many times. "Honored members of the Council, humanity wishes to discuss the recent violations of our trade agreements in the Kepler sector. Zephyrian ships have been stopping our cargo vessels and demanding payment for safe passage through space that belongs to no one." Council Speaker Thysica clicked her mandibles in what Lisa knew was laughter. The insect-like alien had been leading council meetings for over 200 years. She treated humans the way an adult might treat a child who complained about a playground bully. "Young species often have difficulty understanding the complexities of galactic commerce," Thysica said. "Perhaps humanity should focus on learning proper trading protocols before making accusations against established civilizations." Several aliens around the main table made sounds that their translators turned into laughter. Lisa felt her jaw muscles tighten, but her smile never changed. "We understand the protocols, Speaker Thysica. We have followed them exactly as written. The problem is that Zephyrian ships are not following the same protocols when they deal with human vessels." High Commander Vexthal stood up at his place at the main table. He was tall and covered in scales that changed color when he was angry. Right now, they were turning dark red. "Humans presume too much," he said. "Your species has been part of this council for barely 50 years. The Zephyrian Empire has maintained order in this galaxy for over 3,000 years. We do not need lessons in proper behavior from newcomers." Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but Thisica waved one of her 4 arms to silence her. "This matter is not appropriate for council discussion," the speaker announced. "If humanity has concerns about their interactions with established species, they should work harder to improve their own understanding of galactic customs." The meeting was over, just like that. Lisa bowed her head respectfully and gathered her papers. As she walked back toward the door, she could hear the aliens beginning to discuss important matters that did not involve humans. In the corridor outside, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Brooks was waiting. She was the security chief for the human delegation, and she looked like she wanted to hit something. "How did it go?" Amy asked, though her expression showed she already knew the answer. "The same as always," Lisa replied. "We are too young to understand, too new to have valid concerns, and too unimportant to deserve real attention." Amy walked beside Lisa as they headed back toward their ship. "How long are we going to keep doing this? How long do we keep smiling while they treat us like children?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment. They passed by a viewing window that showed space outside the station. In the distance, she could see human ships maintaining their positions in perfect formation. They looked peaceful and unthreatening, just the way humanity wanted them to look. "Not much longer," Lisa finally said. "Every day they treat us this way. They teach us more about who they really are. Soon, they will learn who we really are." Amy looked confused, but before she could ask what that meant, Lisa's communication device beeped. The message was short and used code words that only the human delegation would understand. Lisa read it twice, then deleted it. Her smile finally changed. For just a moment, it became something that might have frightened the aliens if they had been there to see it. "Change of plans, Colonel. We're going home immediately. It seems our patience is about to pay off." The UNS Harmony left the station 3 hours later. As it jumped to hyperspace, no one noticed that it sent a brief signal. To every human ship and station in the galaxy, the message was only 2 words long, but it would change everything. Stand ready. 3 days after the humiliating council meeting, Ambassador Lisa Martinez sat in her quarters aboard the UNS Harmony reading reports from human colonies across the galaxy. Each report told the same story. Alien species were becoming bolder in their treatment of human settlements. What had started as trade disputes was becoming something much worse. The door chimed, and Captain Jake Morrison entered with a grim expression on his face. "We just received an emergency transmission from Earth," Jake said. "The President wants us back at the Council Station immediately. Something big is happening." Lisa set down her tablet and looked at Jake carefully. In 5 years of working together, she had never seen him look this serious. "What kind of something big?" "The kind that ends with shooting," Jake replied. "I have orders to bring the entire escort fleet this time, all 12 ships." 2 days later, the human delegation was back, in the same cold meeting room. This time, the atmosphere felt different. There were more alien ships around the station, and many of them belonged to species that rarely attended council meetings. Lisa noticed that the Vorthak Collective had sent their entire leadership council. The Vorthak were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They looked like giant spiders with too many eyes, and they rarely bothered with council meetings unless something important was happening. Speaker Thisica called the meeting to order with sharp clicks of her mandibles. Today, the council will address territorial disputes and resource allocation in the Outer Rim sectors. Lisa felt cold suddenly. The Outer Rim sectors included New Eden, one of humanity's most important agricultural worlds. 3 million humans lived there, farming the rich soil and raising families in the clean air and open spaces. High Commander Vexthal stood up at the main table. His scales were bright orange, which meant he was pleased about something. The Zephyrian Empire wishes to present evidence that certain worlds in the Outer Rim are being poorly managed by their current inhabitants, he announced. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed detailed scans of New Eden's surface, with charts and graphs that made the human colony look small and inefficient. As you can see, Vexthal continued, the humans have developed less than 12% of this world's agricultural potential. They have failed to establish proper mining operations despite rich mineral deposits. Their population density is far below galactic standards for a world of this quality. Lisa stood up slowly. She had a terrible feeling about where this was going. Speaker Thisica, humanity objects to this discussion. New Eden is a legally recognized human colony world. We have full development rights under galactic law. Thisica waved one of her arms dismissively. Young species often claim more territory than they can properly use. This is a common problem that the Council must address for the good of all galactic citizens. The leader of the Vorthak Collective, a massive spider-like creature called Prime Clutch Mother Zesaneth, spoke for the first time. Her translator made her voice sound like grinding metal. The Vorthak Collective formally claims the world humans. Call New Eden. We will bring proper development and full resource utilization to this underused planet. The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. She looked around the room and saw that the other aliens had known this was coming. This was not a discussion, it was an announcement. You cannot simply claim an inhabited human world, Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady. There are 3 million human citizens living on New Eden. They have been there for 25 years. Prime Clutch Mother Zesneth's many eyes focused on Lisa with what might have been amusement. The current inhabitants will be relocated to more appropriate worlds. The Vorthak will provide transportation assistance. Lisa felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. Relocation assistance. That was what aliens called it when they forced people from their homes. Speaker Thisica, humanity formally protests this action. We demand a full council vote before any territorial changes are considered. Thisica's mandibles clicked rapidly. This is not a matter for voting. The Territorial Efficiency Committee has already reviewed the case and made their recommendation. The council accepts their findings. Lisa looked around the room again. Not one alien was objecting. Not one voice was raised in support of human rights. After 50 years of diplomacy and cooperation, humanity had no allies in this room. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Brooks was standing near the wall, her hand resting on her sidearm. Lisa could see the anger in Amy's eyes, and she knew that the security chief was thinking about doing something that could not be taken back. This is illegal under galactic law, Lisa said. The Human Federation will not accept this decision. High. Commander Vexthal's scales shifted to deep red. Perhaps humanity should focus on managing their existing territories more effectively, instead of complaining about decisions made by their betters. The insult hung in the air like poison. 50 years of careful diplomacy, 50 years of patient cooperation, 50 years of taking insults with smiles and bowing heads. And this was what it had earned humanity. Lisa's communication device beeped. The message was marked urgent and came directly from Earth. She read it quickly, then read it again to make sure she understood correctly. "Speaker Thisica," Lisa said, standing up straight and looking directly at the insect-like alien. "I need to make an immediate report to my government about this council decision. How long before Vorthak forces begin their occupation of New Eden?" Prime Clutch Mother Zesnith made a sound that the translator interpreted as satisfaction. "Preliminary operations have already begun. Vorthak vessels are currently securing the orbital approaches to ensure a smooth transition." The words hit Lisa like lightning. They had not waited for the council meeting. They had not waited for any discussion or protest. They had simply taken what they wanted while making speeches about legality and proper procedures. Amy Brooks stepped forward, her face pale with anger. "They are already there. You are already attacking our people?" "Not attacking," Thesica corrected. "Securing. The Vorthak are simply ensuring that the transition of authority proceeds without incident." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment and made a decision that would change everything. When she opened them, her expression had changed completely. The patient, diplomatic smile was gone. In its place was something harder and much more dangerous. "Thank you for clarifying the situation," Lisa said in a voice that was perfectly calm and perfectly cold. "Humanity now understands exactly where we stand with this council." She turned and walked toward the door. Amy Brooks followed her, along with the rest of the human delegation. As they left the room, Lisa could hear the aliens beginning their next discussion about proper resource management. In the corridor, Amy caught up with Lisa. "Ambassador, what are we going to do?" Lisa looked at Amy with eyes that no longer held any trace of diplomacy or patience. "We are going to remind the galaxy who they are dealing with," Lisa said. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them it is time to turn off polite mode." President Katie Sullivan sat at the head of the emergency council table in the secure conference room beneath the White House. Around her sat the most powerful people in human space: generals, admirals, intelligence chiefs, and the leaders of every major human colony world. The holographic display in the center of the table showed the current situation at New Eden. Vorthak ships surrounded the planet like a metal net. On the surface, human farmers and their families watched alien landing. "Craft descend from the sky. How many Vorthak ships?" President Sullivan asked. Admiral Susan Clark, commander of the human Deep Space Fleet, answered without looking at her notes. 47 vessels of various classes. They brought enough firepower to level every city on New Eden if they wanted. 2. General Robert Davis, head of Human Defense Forces, leaned forward in his chair. "They are not just taking New Eden, Madam President. Our intelligence sources report that 17 different alien species are preparing similar moves against human territory." This was planned. The president looked around the table at the faces of her advisors. She had been in office for 6 years, and in all that time she had followed the same policy as every human leader since first contact: smile, cooperate, and avoid conflict at all costs. "Dr. Yang," she said, turning to a thin man with gray hair who sat quietly at the far end of the table. "What does Human Intelligence Services recommend?" Dr. Peter Yang had been the head of his for 15 years. He was the man who knew humanity's deepest secrets, and he looked older than his 60 years. "Madam President," Dr. Yang said carefully, "I recommend that we activate Operation Awakening." The room became very quiet. Operation Awakening was a plan that most people in the room had heard rumors about, but few knew the details. President Sullivan studied Dr. Yang's face. "Explain Operation Awakening to the Council, Doctor." Dr. Yang stood up and activated a new holographic display. The image showed a map of human space, but it looked very different from the official maps that the Galactic Council had on file. 50. Years ago, when humanity made first contact with alien civilizations, our leaders made a critical decision, Dr. Yang began. They decided that humanity should appear weak, peaceful, and harmless, while we learned everything we could about our new neighbors. The map changed, showing human ships and stations that the aliens had never seen. For 50 years, we have maintained two different versions of human civilization: the public version that aliens see and the real version that we have kept hidden. Admiral Clark stood up next to Dr. Yang. "Every human cargo ship that aliens have seen has been equipped with hidden weapon systems. Every peaceful colony world has underground military facilities. Every diplomatic mission has been an intelligence-gathering operation." General Davis activated another display that showed detailed information about alien military capabilities, trade routes, and political weaknesses. "We know more about alien civilizations than they know about themselves," General Davis said. "We have infiltrated their governments, their military forces, and their economic systems. We have been preparing for this day since the moment we realized they would never treat us as equals." President Sullivan looked at the displays with growing amazement. "How many people know about this?" "Outside this room, fewer than 10,000 people in all of human space," Dr. Yang replied. "Everyone else believes exactly what the aliens believe: that humanity is a young, weak species that prefers diplomacy to conflict." The president stood up and walked around the table, studying the information on the displays. She saw battle plans that had been decades in the making. She saw technology that was far beyond anything aliens suspected humans possessed. She saw a military force that had been hidden in plain sight for 50 years. "What are our actual military capabilities?" she asked. Admiral Clark smiled for the first time since entering the room. "Madam President, our real fleet has over 800 ships. The aliens think we have fewer than 50. Our real technology is approximately 30 years ahead of anything they currently use. Our actual population is nearly double what they believe." "How is that possible?" Dr. Yang answered. "Hidden colonies, secret research stations, and off-the-books construction facilities. While aliens have been treating us like children, we have been building the most advanced civilization in galactic history." President Sullivan sat back down and looked at each person around the table. "And you believe it is time to reveal this?" "Madam President," General Davis said quietly, "they are taking our people from their homes. They are stealing our worlds and laughing at our protests. If we do not act now, they will continue until there is nothing left of human civilization except what they allow us to keep." The president was quiet for several minutes. Everyone in the room understood that she was making one of the most important decisions in human history. "Dr. Yang, if we activate Operation Awakening, what exactly happens?" "Every human ship in the galaxy drops its disguise simultaneously. Every hidden base comes online. Every sleeper agent activates. Every piece of technology we have been hiding gets revealed. The galaxy discovers that humanity is not the weak species they thought we were. And then," Admiral Clark answered this time, "then we remind them that taking our worlds without permission is a very bad idea." President Sullivan looked at the display showing New Eden. Somewhere down on that planet, human families were hiding in their homes while alien soldiers walked through their streets. "Gentlemen, ladies," she said finally, "I want options. I want to know exactly what Operation Awakening will accomplish and what it will cost." For the next 4 hours, the Council reviewed plans that had been 50 years in the making. They studied casualty estimates, political consequences, and strategic objectives. They debated the moral implications of deception on such a massive scale. Finally, as the sun was setting over Washington, President Sullivan called for a vote. All in favor of activating Operation Awakening? Every hand around the table went up. Opposed? No. Hands? Abstaining? No hands. President Sullivan stood up and walked to the communications console at the head of the room. She placed her hand on the biometric scanner and spoke clearly into the microphone. "This is President Sullivan. Authorization. Code Alpha 77 Omega. Activate Operation Awakening. Execute immediately." Across human space, encrypted messages began transmitting to every human ship, station, and colony. The messages were short and simple, but they would change the galaxy forever. Dr. Yang gathered his papers and prepared to leave the room. As he reached the door, President Sullivan called after him. "Doctor, how long before the aliens realize what has happened?" Dr. Yang smiled, and for the first time in years, he looked happy. "About 12 hours, Madam President. Maybe less if they are paying attention." As the council members filed out of the room, President Sullivan remained standing at the communications console. In her hand was a small device that would let her monitor the activation of Operation Awakening in real time. The device beeped softly as confirmation signals began arriving from across the galaxy. Each beep represented another piece of humanity's true strength revealing itself to an unsuspecting universe. President Sullivan smiled as she watched the numbers climb. 50 years of patience were finally about to pay off. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking coffee on the bridge of the UNS Harmony when the encrypted message arrived. The communication officer handed him a data pad with shaking hands. Jake read the message twice before he believed what he was seeing. After 50 years of diplomatic smiles and careful words, humanity was finally taking off its mask. "Lieutenant Parker," Jake called to his communications officer, "send a message to all ships in the escort fleet. Tell them to prepare for full combat deployment." "Sir?" Lieutenant Parker looked confused. "Are we under attack?" Jake stood up from his command chair and walked to the main viewing screen. Outside, he could see the other human ships in his escort fleet. They looked exactly like what they were supposed to be. Peaceful diplomatic vessels with light weapons and minimal armor. "Lieutenant, execute authorization code 77 Omega." Parker's eyes went wide. Every human military officer knew that code, but none of them had ever expected to hear it. "Sir, confirming authorization. 77 Omega. Activating combat protocols." Throughout the escort fleet, warning signals began sounding as ships that had appeared harmless for decades began, revealing their true nature. Armor plating slid away from hidden weapon systems. Scanner arrays extended from concealed compartments. Engine signatures changed as power cores that had been running at half capacity suddenly came online. In 15 minutes, Jake's escort fleet had transformed from 12 lightly armed diplomatic ships into 12 heavy cruisers that could match any military force in the galaxy. Meanwhile, near New Eden, Commander Lisa Park received the same message aboard what the Vorthak believed was a human cargo hauler called the Lucky Strike. Lisa had been pretending to be a merchant captain for 8 years, watching Vorthak ships patrol human space and learning their weaknesses. "All hands, this is the captain," Lisa announced over the ship's communication system. Operation Awakening is now active. Drop the disguise and prepare for combat. The lucky strike began to change. False hull plating fell away, revealing the sleek lines of an advanced destroyer. Hidden weapon ports opened along the ship's sides. The cargo bay doors opened to release 6 smaller attack ships that had been hidden inside. Lisa looked at her tactical display and smiled. Around New Eden, there were 47 Vorthak ships. They thought they were facing a single human cargo vessel. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Communications. Send a message to the Vorthak fleet, Lisa ordered. Tell them they have 1 hour to leave our space voluntarily. The tactical officer looked confused. Captain, there are only 7 of us and 47 of them. Lisa's smile became something that would have given the Vorthak nightmares if they could have seen it. Lieutenant, check your long-range sensors. We are not alone. The tactical officer ran a deep scan, and his face went pale. Captain, I am reading over 200 human ships approaching New Eden. Where did they come from? They have been there all along, Lisa replied. Hidden, disguised, and waiting for this moment. Across the galaxy, similar transformations were taking place. Human merchant convoys were revealing themselves to be wolf packs of advanced warships. Research stations were activating defensive systems that could protect entire star systems. Agricultural colonies were launching fighter squadrons from underground hangars. Captain Alex Turner commanded what aliens knew as the merchant vessel Peaceful Trader. For 3 years, he had been allowing Zephyrian patrol ships to board his vessel and inspect his cargo. The Zephyrians always found exactly what they expected: farming equipment, medical supplies, and other peaceful goods. They never bothered to scan deep enough to find the advanced weapon systems hidden throughout the ship's structure. They never noticed that the medical supplies included enough combat drugs to enhance an entire army. They never realized that the farming equipment could be assembled into military-grade vehicles in less than an hour. Attention, Zephyrian. Patrol fleet, Alex broadcast on an open channel. This is Captain Turner of the human vessel Retribution. You are ordered to stand down and prepare to be boarded. The Zephyrian commander responded with what the translator interpreted as laughter. Human cargo captain, return to your shipping routes. Military vessels have no business with merchant traffic. Alex looked at his crew and shook his head. Some people never learn. Tactical, target their weapons and engines. Let's teach them the difference between a merchant and a warship. The Peaceful Trader fired its first shots in 50 years. The weapons that emerged from hidden compartments were unlike anything the Zephyrians had seen before. The lead patrol ship was disabled before its commander understood what was happening. On Earth, Admiral Susan Clark stood in the command center of human fleet operations and watched as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Every hidden human ship was revealing itself. Every secret base was coming online. Every sleeper agent was activating. Admiral, reported Captain Nina Foster from the communications station, we have confirmation from all sectors. Operation Awakening is proceeding on schedule. Admiral Clark nodded as she watched the tactical display. Red dots representing human ships were appearing all over the galaxy. In some places, there were 10 times more human vessels than the aliens had believed existed. Status report on New Eden? Commander Park reports that the Vorthak fleet is requesting negotiations, Captain Foster replied. Apparently, they are surprised by our response. Admiral Clark almost laughed. Surprised was probably not a strong enough word for what the Vorthak were feeling right now. Tell Commander Park she is authorized to accept their surrender if they wish to offer it. If not, she is authorized to remove them from our space by whatever means necessary. At New Eden, the Vorthak commander was indeed surprised. Prime Admiral Kes Noth had expected to face token resistance from a few human patrol boats. Instead, he found himself surrounded by a fleet that matched his own in size and exceeded it in technology. "Human vessels," he broadcast. "This is a legal occupation authorized by the Galactic Council. You are interfering with official Vorthak operations." Commander Lisa Park's response was calm and professional. "Prime Admiral, this is a human world with human citizens. You have 1 hour to leave our space. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war." "You dare threaten the Vorthak Collective?" "No," Lisa replied. "We are not threatening you. We are informing you of the consequences of your choices. The hour begins now." Prime Admiral Kes Noth looked at his tactical displays and realized that his 47 ships were now outnumbered almost 3-1. Worse, his sensors were showing that the human ships carried weapons technology that his fleet could not match. For the first time in 3,000 years of Vorthak expansion, a collective fleet found itself outgunned and surrounded. The hour passed slowly. Human ships maintained their positions around New Eden, while Vorthak vessels tried to decide what to do. Finally, with 5 minutes remaining, Prime Admiral Kes Noth made his choice. Human ships. The Vorthak fleet is withdrawing from this system. This matter will be reported to the Galactic Council. Commander Park watched the alien ships begin their departure. "Acknowledged, Prime Admiral. Have a safe journey." As the last Vorthak ship disappeared into hyperspace, Lisa looked around her. Bridge at the crew that had been pretending to be civilian merchants for 8 years. "Well done, everyone. 50 years of patience have finally paid off." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as human forces revealed themselves to alien species that had underestimated humanity for half a century. The galaxy was about to learn that the polite, peaceful humans they had been bullying were neither polite nor peaceful. They were simply patient, and their patience had finally run out. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 18 hours after Operation Awakening began. Speaker Thissika's mandibles clicked frantically as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Every alien species was discovering that their understanding of human capabilities had been completely wrong. High Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the main council table, his scales dark with anger and fear. "The humans have attacked 17 different patrol fleets without warning. This is an act of war against the established galactic order." Prime Clutch Mother Zesaneth of the Vorthak Collective made grinding sounds that her translator interpreted as distress. "Our occupation fleet at the world they call New Eden was forced to retreat by ships that appeared from nowhere. Human vessels that should not exist." Around the council chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species shared similar stories. Human cargo ships that had revealed themselves to be warships. Human colonies that had launched military fleets from hidden bases. Human diplomats who had vanished along with their escorts, leaving only empty space where peaceful vessels had been moments before. "How is this possible?" demanded Overlord Quintar of the Thraxi hegemony. "Our intelligence services monitor human space constantly. There are no human military fleets large enough to challenge established civilizations." Speaker Thissika activated the Council's central display system. The holographic image showed human space as it appeared in official galactic records. 57 colony worlds, a small merchant fleet, and a few dozen patrol vessels for system defense. "This is what we believed human civilization looked like," Thisica announced. "These records were compiled from 50 years of observation and interaction." The display changed to show new information that had been gathered in the past 18 hours. The number of human worlds had more than doubled. The merchant fleet had been revealed as military vessels in disguise. The patrol vessels had been joined by hundreds of ships that had appeared from unknown locations. "This is what human civilization actually looks like," Thisica said quietly. The silence in the council chamber was complete. For 50 years, every alien species had been operating under the assumption that humanity was a minor player in galactic affairs. They had made political decisions, trade agreements, and territorial claims based on the belief that humans were too weak to resist their will. Now they were learning that humanity had been allowing them to believe these things while building a civilization that rivaled any in the galaxy. Counselor Mirtath of the Aquatic Collective spoke from his water-filled observation tank. "Speaker Thisica, we need to understand how our intelligence was so completely wrong. How did humans hide this level of development for 5 decades? The answer came from an unexpected source. A new voice spoke from the chamber's communication system, and everyone recognized it immediately. Ambassador Lisa Martinez had not been seen since the last council meeting, but her words now carried a very different tone than anyone remembered. "Honorable council members," Lisa's voice said calmly, "humanity would like to address your current concerns." "This is a closed emergency session," Thisica replied. "Human representatives were not invited to participate." "Nevertheless, we are participating," Lisa responded. "Please look at your sensors." Throughout the council chamber, alien delegates activated their personal scanning devices. What they saw made several of them make sounds of distress. The space around the council station was filled with human ships. Not the small escort vessels that usually accompanied diplomatic missions, but full-sized warships that had appeared without triggering any of the station's detection systems. "How many ships?" whispered Overlord Quintar. Lisa's voice answered as if she had heard him. "Enough! Speaker Thisica, humanity formally requests permission to address the council. We have several matters to discuss." Thisica looked around the chamber at her fellow council members. Many of them were clearly frightened by the sudden appearance of a human fleet that matched the combined military forces of several major civilizations. "Permission granted," Thisica said finally, "but this discussion will be limited to current territorial disputes." "Thank you, Speaker. However, this discussion will not be limited to anything. Humanity has 50 years of grievances to address, and we intend to address all of them." The main doors to the council chamber opened, and Ambassador Lisa Martinez walked in. But she was not alone, and she was not the same diplomatic figure who had been dismissed and ignored for 5 years. She wore a military uniform instead of diplomatic robes, and she was accompanied by soldiers who carried weapons that made alien security forces look primitive. Lisa walked directly to the center of the chamber, ignoring the small table where minor species usually sat. She stood next to the main council table and looked up at the aliens who had been looking down at her for so long. "Members of the Galactic Council," Lisa began. "For 50 years, humanity has participated in this council as a minor member. We have accepted insults, tolerated violations of our territorial rights, and allowed established species to treat us as children who did not understand galactic politics." High Commander Vexthal stood up, his scales shifting to threatening colors. "Human! You forget your place. This council has maintained order in the galaxy for thousands of years before your species achieved space flight." Lisa looked directly at Vexthal and smiled. It was not a diplomatic smile. "Commander, our species achieved spaceflight over 200 years ago. We achieved faster-than-light travel 130 years ago. We developed energy weapons 90 years ago. By the time we made contact with galactic civilization, we were already more advanced than most of the species in this chamber." The revelation sent waves of shocked sounds through the council chamber. According to official records, humans had only developed spaceflight 60 years ago. "Impossible," declared Prime Clutch Mother Zesneth. "We have records of human technological development. We have observed your progress." "You have observed exactly what we wanted you to observe," Lisa replied. "While you were watching us develop primitive technology, our real scientists were creating weapons and ships that surpass anything this council has ever seen." Lisa activated a holographic projector and filled the chamber with images that made several aliens step backward in fear. The display showed human ships that looked nothing like the peaceful vessels the galaxy had known. These were clearly warships, sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that seemed to bend light around them. "This is the human fleet that you never saw," Lisa announced. 847 ships of the line, each one capable of matching 3 or 4 vessels from any alien navy. Hidden construction facilities that can build more ships in a month than most civilizations produce in a year. Weapons technology that is approximately 30 years ahead of anything currently known to galactic science. Overlord Quintar made a sound that his translator could not interpret. "Why?" he finally managed to ask. "Why hide your capabilities? Why pretend to be weak?" Lisa's expression became very serious. "Because we wanted to learn who you really were, before we revealed who we really are. We wanted to understand how galactic civilization treats species that cannot defend themselves. We wanted to know what kind of neighbors we were dealing with." She paused and looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at her. "Now we know," she continued. "We have learned that this council respects only strength. We have learned that established civilizations will steal territory from weaker species without hesitation. We have learned that 50 years of cooperation and diplomacy mean nothing when profit and expansion are at stake." Speaker Thysica's mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "What does humanity want from this council?" Lisa smiled again, and this time every alien in the chamber felt afraid. "Speaker Thysica, humanity wants to renegotiate our relationship with galactic civilization. All of it. Every treaty, every trade agreement, every territorial boundary. Everything will be discussed again, and this time, humanity will be negotiating from a position of strength." The chamber erupted in angry sounds from a dozen different species. Threats, protests, and demands filled the air until Lisa raised her hand for silence. "Of course," she said calmly, "any species that prefers to maintain the old relationship is welcome to try. But I should mention that the human fleet currently surrounding this station represents less than 10% of our total military capability." The chamber became very quiet very quickly. "We will begin renegotiation tomorrow," Lisa announced. "Today, we are going to collect some property that belongs to us." Captain Nina Foster stood on the bridge of the UNS Retribution, studying the tactical display that showed her target. Below on the planet Corvani Prime, the leadership of the Corvani Trade Federation was about to discover that their years of illegal human trafficking had not gone unnoticed. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Dan Rogers from the intelligence station, "we have confirmed the location of all 17 Federation Council members. They are currently in their emergency meeting bunker discussing the human situation." Nina nodded, slowly. For 8 years, She had been gathering evidence of Corvani crimes against humanity. The Trade Federation had been capturing human civilians from remote settlements and selling them as exotic specimens to private collectors across the galaxy. Over 3,000 humans had disappeared, and until today, no one had been powerful enough to demand justice. Lieutenant, activate the containment field around the bunker. I want to make sure none of them escape while we are discussing their crimes. Field activated, Captain. They are trapped. Nina opened a communication channel to the planet's surface. Corvani Federation Council, this is Captain Foster of the Human Defense Forces. You are under arrest for violations of galactic law regarding sentient trafficking. The response came quickly, translated from angry, chittering sounds. Human ship, you have no authority in Corvani space. Remove yourself immediately or face the consequences. Nina looked at her tactical officer. Commander Hayes, please show them the consequences of threatening a human warship. The Retribution fired a single warning shot that vaporized a Corvani military depot on the other side of the planet. The explosion was visible from orbit and sent a clear message about human capabilities. Federation Council, Nina broadcast again, as I was saying, you are under arrest. Surrender peacefully and you will be treated according to galactic law. Resist, and you will be treated according to human military justice. While Nina was collecting the Corvani leadership, similar operations were taking place across the galaxy. 50 years of careful record-keeping had given humanity a detailed list of every alien who had committed crimes against human citizens. Commander Eric Stone led a strike team aboard the luxury station Pleasure Palace 7, where wealthy aliens had been buying human slaves for their private entertainment. Eric's team moved through the station like shadows, stunning alien customers and freeing human prisoners who had not seen the sun in years. Command, this is Stone, Eric reported over his communication device. We have recovered 43 human civilians from this facility. Some of them have been here for over a decade. The response came from Admiral Karen White aboard the command ship Vigilance. Understood, Commander. Transport the civilians to medical facilities and prepare the aliens for trial. What about the station itself? Admiral White was quiet for a moment. Destroy it. Make sure every slaver in the galaxy knows what happens to facilities that trade in human lives. Dr. Alan Murphy, head of Human Strategic Operations, coordinated the justice operations from his command center on Earth. His screens showed the locations of over 200 facilities where humans had been held against their will. Each location was being raided simultaneously by human forces that had appeared as if from nowhere. Status report, Dr. Murphy called to his staff. Operation Clean Sweep is proceeding on schedule, reported Colonel Ryan Mitchell. We have recovered over 1,500 human civilians so far. Resistance has been minimal. What about the Vorthak breeding program? Colonel Mitchell's expression became grim. We found the facility. The Vorthak have been trying to create human-alien hybrid soldiers. We recovered 23 human subjects and terminated the program permanently. Dr. Murphy nodded. The Vorthak breeding program had been one of their most carefully guarded secrets. They had believed that human genetics could be used to create super soldiers for their military. They had been wrong about human genetics, but they had been very wrong about human patience. Meanwhile, High Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian Empire sat in his command bunker, watching reports of human operations across the galaxy. His scales shifted through colors that indicated fear, anger, and confusion. How are they everywhere at once? He demanded of his intelligence chief. How do they know about operations that were classified at the highest levels? Intelligence Director Morgath looked at his data pads with growing horror. Commander, they have been watching us for decades. Every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation, every military conference, they have been recording everything while we thought they were too primitive to understand what they were seeing. Vexthal stood up and activated his personal communication system. Get me Prime Admiral Kesanoth of the Vorthak Fleet. We need to coordinate a response to this human aggression. The communication took several minutes to connect. When it did, Prime Admiral Kesanoth looked exhausted and defeated. Commander Vexthal, the Vorthak Collective is suspending all military operations pending negotiations with human forces. What? Vexthal's scales turned bright red with anger. The Collective never retreats. We have been expanding our territory for 3,000 years. Commander, they took our entire breeding program in 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Our most secure facility protected by our best troops, surrounded by our strongest defenses. Human soldiers appeared inside the facility. Without triggering any alarms, freed their people and destroyed everything we had built. Vexthal felt something cold in his stomach. How many humans were in the assault team? 6. 6 humans destroyed a facility that housed over 200 Vorthak scientists and 400 security troops. The communication ended, leaving Vexthal staring at a blank screen. 6 humans. His own intelligence reports were telling him similar stories from across Zephyrian space. Small human teams were appearing at heavily defended locations and accomplishing objectives that should have required entire fleets. Back aboard the Retribution, Captain Nina Foster was interrogating the captured Corvani leadership. The trade. Federation Council members sat in restraints, their insect-like features showing clear signs of fear. Federation leader Click-Tath, Nina said calmly, our records show that your organization has trafficked 3,217 human beings over the past 15 years. Each of these crimes carries a sentence of 50 years imprisonment under galactic law. Click-Tath made chittering sounds that the translator interpreted as desperate pleading. Captain, the Federation was operating under established galactic customs. Capturing primitive species for scientific study is legal under Council regulations. Nina's expression did not change. Federation leader, humans are not a primitive species. We are a technologically advanced civilization with full Council membership. Trafficking our citizens is a capital crime. But the Council classified humans as a developing species. The regulations clearly state. The regulations, Nina interrupted, are about to change, along with several other aspects of galactic law. She stood up and looked down at the alien who had profited from human suffering for 15 years. You will be transferred to a human penal facility where you will serve your sentence alongside every other alien who participated in crimes against humanity. Consider yourself fortunate that we still believe in justice rather than revenge. HFY. Click-Tath was led away. Nina received a communication from Earth. Dr. Murphy's voice carried satisfaction and grim determination. Captain Foster, Operation Clean Sweep is complete. We have recovered over 2,000 human civilians and arrested over 800 aliens involved in trafficking operations. Any resistance? Minimal. Most of them surrendered immediately when they realized they were facing human military forces instead of the diplomatic protests they expected. Nina looked out the viewing window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning that humanity remembered every insult, every crime, and every injustice that had been committed against human citizens. Dr. Murphy, what are our orders for the next phase? Captain, tomorrow we begin teaching the galaxy about the new rules. Tonight, We celebrate the fact that no human will ever again be sold like property to alien collectors. Nina smiled as she thought about the thousands of human families who would soon be reunited with loved ones they thought were lost forever. Justice had been a long time coming, but it had finally arrived with the overwhelming force of human determination and carefully planned revenge. 3 weeks after Operation Awakening began, the galaxy had become a very different place. Ambassador Lisa Martinez stood in the redesigned council chamber aboard the human command ship Justice, watching as alien delegates waited nervously for the negotiations to begin. The chamber had been changed to reflect the new reality of galactic politics. There was no longer a raised table for important species and lower tables for minor ones. Instead, all delegates sat at the same level, around a circular table that put everyone on equal ground. Lisa wore the uniform of a Human Federation admiral now, not the diplomatic robes she had worn for 5 years of polite humiliation. Across from her sat representatives of every major alien civilization, and all of them looked nervous. Speaker Thesica was the first to speak, her mandibles clicking in patterns that indicated extreme caution. Admiral Martinez, the Galactic Council is prepared to discuss revised territorial agreements and trade relationships. Lisa looked around the table at faces that had once dismissed her as unimportant. Speaker Thesica, before we discuss new agreements, we need to address the consequences of the old ones. High Commander Vexthal's scales shifted to dark colors. Admiral, the Zephyrian Empire has already withdrawn from all disputed territories. We have released all human prisoners and paid the agreed compensation. What more do you demand? Commander, Vexthal, I demand nothing. I am simply explaining the new reality of galactic politics. Lisa activated a holographic display that showed current fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Red dots represented human ships, and there were far more red dots than anyone had expected. As you can see, humanity now controls or monitors approximately 40% of galactic space. This happened not through conquest, but through the revelation of assets that we had kept hidden for 50 years. Prime Clutch Mother Zesneth made grinding sounds that indicated distress. Admiral, the Vorthak Collective understands that humanity is now a major galactic power. We seek peaceful coexistence with your Federation. Lisa smiled, but it was not the diplomatic smile that aliens remembered from their previous meetings. Clutch Mother, peaceful coexistence requires mutual respect. For 50 years, humanity offered respect and cooperation to galactic civilization. We were treated with contempt and exploitation. Now we will have peaceful coexistence on our terms. Overlord Quintar of the Thraxi hegemony leaned forward in his chair. Admiral, what exactly are humanity's terms? Lisa stood up and walked around the table, stopping behind each alien delegate as she spoke. First, all territorial boundaries will be renegotiated based on actual defensive capabilities rather than political convenience. Second, all trade agreements will be restructured to reflect humanity's true economic position. Third, all laws regarding the treatment of sentient beings will be enforced equally, regardless of species age or political influence. She paused behind Thesica's chair. Fourth, any species that harms human citizens will face immediate and overwhelming retaliation, not diplomatic protests, not economic sanctions, retaliation. The word hung in the air like a threat, because that was exactly what it was. Counselor Mirtath spoke from his water tank, his aquatic voice carrying undertones of fear. Admiral, these terms essentially give humanity veto power over galactic Policy. No species has ever held such authority. Lisa returned to her seat and looked directly at Mirtath. Counselor. No species has ever had the military capability to enforce such authority. Humanity does. To prove her point, Lisa activated another display showing the recent liberation of the Corvani slave markets. The footage showed human soldiers moving through alien facilities with precision and overwhelming force, freeing human prisoners and arresting their captors. The old galactic order was based on the assumption that established civilizations could exploit weaker species without consequences, Lisa continued. That assumption was incorrect. There will always be consequences. The only question is when they arrive and how severe they are. Commander Eric Stone had arrived at the station the previous day with a refugee convoy from the former Corvani territories. The convoy carried 15,000 aliens who had been living in areas controlled by the Trade Federation. When human forces liberated human slaves, they had also offered protection to any aliens who wanted to escape Corvani rule. Eric entered the chamber and handed Lisa a data pad with the latest intelligence reports. Admiral, Eric said quietly, we have confirmed reports of 3 more trafficking networks operating in the Outer Rim, requesting permission to begin liberation operations. Lisa read the reports quickly. 3 more networks meant potentially hundreds of human civilians still held in slavery. Permission granted, Commander. Use whatever force is necessary to ensure the safety of our people. As Eric left the chamber, the alien delegates exchanged nervous glances. They were beginning to understand that humanity's new approach to galactic politics was not just about territory or trade agreements. It was about the systematic elimination of anyone who threatened human citizens. High Commander Vexthal tried one more attempt at negotiation. Admiral, surely humanity does not intend to police the entire galaxy. Such a responsibility would require enormous resources and constant military action. Lisa looked at Vexthal with an expression that made his scales shift to colors indicating extreme unease. Commander, humanity has been preparing for this responsibility for 50 years. We have the resources, the technology, and the determination to ensure that galactic civilization operates according to principles of justice and equality. She paused and looked around the table again. Of course, any species that prefers to maintain the old system of exploitation and abuse is welcome to try. But they should understand that they will be doing so without human cooperation, human trade, or human protection. The threat was clear. Humanity controlled too much of galactic commerce and transportation for any species to survive without their cooperation. Economic isolation from human space would be devastating for most alien civilizations. Dr. Peter Yang had spent the past 3 weeks analyzing the galactic economy and discovered that human involvement in interstellar trade was far more extensive than anyone had realized. Hidden behind shell companies and false registrations, human businesses controlled major portions of the food distribution, technology manufacturing, and raw material processing networks that kept galactic civilization functioning. If humanity chose to withdraw their economic cooperation, most alien species would face immediate shortages of essential goods. Speaker Thisica finally spoke again, her voice carrying a tone of resignation. Admiral Martinez, the Galactic Council accepts humanity's terms for continued cooperation. We will begin implementing the new territorial and trade agreements immediately. Lisa nodded slowly. Thank you, Speaker. I am confident that galactic civilization will be much more stable and just under the new arrangements. As the alien delegates prepared to leave, Overlord Quintar approached Lisa with a question that had been troubling him since the negotiations began. Admiral, May I ask why humanity is allowing us to maintain our independence? Your military superiority is overwhelming. You could simply conquer any species that opposed you. Lisa considered the question carefully before answering. Overlord, humanity believes that diversity makes civilization stronger. We have no desire to rule the galaxy or eliminate other species. We simply refuse to be victimized by civilizations. That mistake, patience for weakness. She looked out the viewing window at the stars beyond. The galaxy is large enough for all of us, but it is not large enough for slavery, exploitation, and the abuse of innocent beings. Those practices end now, and they will never return as long as humanity has the power to prevent them. As the alien delegates departed, Lisa remained in the chamber with her human staff. Admiral Karen White approached with a smile of satisfaction. Admiral, intelligence reports indicate that 17 different species are already implementing new policies to prevent any actions that might be interpreted as hostile to human interests. Lisa nodded. Fear can be a useful teacher, Admiral. But fear alone is not enough. We need to show them that cooperation with humanity brings benefits, not just that opposition brings consequences. What do you recommend? Lisa looked at the star. Charts showing human and alien territories. We begin the second phase of our plan. We show the galaxy what human protection and partnership can accomplish. Some species will need to be taught to fear us. Others will need to be taught to trust us. She smiled as she thought about the future they were building. In 50 years, the galaxy will wonder how they ever survived without human leadership. And we will have created a civilization based on justice rather than exploitation. 6 months after the day humanity turned off polite mode, President Katie Sullivan stood before the newly reformed Galactic Assembly. The old council chamber had been replaced with a building that reflected the new reality of galactic politics. Every species had equal representation, and no one sat in elevated positions of presumed superiority. The assembly met on the neutral world of Haven, a planet that had been jointly developed by human and alien engineers as a symbol of the new, cooperative spirit in galactic civilization. The building itself was a marvel of integrated technology, combining the best innovations from dozens of different species. President Sullivan wore the formal uniform of the Human Federation, but she also wore the ceremonial sash that marked her as the first elected president of the Galactic Assembly. The aliens had insisted on the election after discovering that human leadership was significantly more effective than the old system of inherited authority and ancient privileges. Members of the Galactic Assembly, President Sullivan began. 6 months ago, we faced a crisis that threatened to destroy the foundation of interstellar civilization. Today, we gather to celebrate the creation of a new foundation built on principles of justice, equality, and mutual respect. The assembly hall was filled with representatives from over 200 species, including many that had never been allowed to participate in galactic government under the old system. The Aquatic Collective sat next to the Silicon-based Miners Union. The Peaceful Agricultural Coalition shared space with the former warrior clans who had renounced their aggressive traditions. Admiral Jake Morrison, now serving as Director of Galactic Security, presented the quarterly safety report. Madam President, we are pleased to announce that incidents of sentient trafficking have decreased by 98%. Territorial disputes have been reduced to the lowest level in recorded galactic history. Piracy and illegal exploitation of developing species have been virtually eliminated. The statistics were impressive, but President Sullivan knew that the real victory was not in the numbers. It was in the transformation of galactic culture from one based on the exploitation of weakness to one based on the protection of the innocent. Dr. Alan Murphy, now serving as Secretary of Interspecies Justice, stood to deliver his report. Madam President, the trials of individuals involved in crimes against sentient beings have been completed. 4,237 aliens have been convicted and sentenced according to galactic law. All human citizens who were held illegally have been freed and returned to their families. The trials had been conducted with scrupulous attention to legal procedure and fairness. Despite their anger over 50 years of abuse, humanity had insisted on justice rather than revenge. Every alien defendant had been provided with legal representation and the right to appeal their sentence. Many alien species had been surprised by human adherence to legal principles, even when dealing with those who had harmed human citizens. It was a lesson in the difference between justice and vengeance that the galaxy had needed to learn. Speaker Thesica, now serving as Assembly Secretary under the new democratic system, presented the Economic Development Report. Her mandibles clicked in patterns that indicated satisfaction rather than the fear she had shown 6 months earlier. Madam President, galactic trade volume has increased by 400% since the implementation of the new economic protocols. Species that were previously excluded from major trade networks have seen dramatic improvements in their standard of living. The economic transformation had been as significant as the political one. Under human leadership, galactic trade had become based on fair exchange rather than exploitation. Developing species were protected from predatory trade practices, and established civilizations discovered that cooperation was more profitable than domination. Commander Eric Stone, recently promoted to Director of Refugee Affairs, had his own success story to share. Madam President, we have successfully relocated over 2 million beings who were displaced by the transformation of galactic government. The new settlement worlds are exceeding all development projections. The refugee crisis had been one of the biggest challenges of the transition. When the old system of exploitation ended, millions of aliens who had been living as slaves or indentured servants suddenly needed new homes and new lives. Humanity had taken responsibility for ensuring that these beings were cared for and given opportunities to build better futures. Captain Nina Foster, now Admiral Foster and Director of Enforcement Operations, presented the security assessment. Madam President, our monitoring systems have detected no organized resistance to the new galactic order. 3 small extremist groups have been disbanded peacefully, and their members have been offered counseling and reintegration services. The transition had not been entirely smooth. Some aliens from previously dominant species had attempted to organize opposition to human leadership. However, these efforts had been undermined by the fact that the new system was clearly better for the vast majority of galactic citizens. Even many members of the old elite had discovered that they preferred a system based on merit and cooperation, rather than inherited privilege and constant warfare. President Sullivan looked around the assembly hall at the faces of beings from across the galaxy. 6 months ago, many of these species had been enemies or had never been allowed to participate in galactic government. Today, they were working together to solve problems and build a better future for all sentient life. Members of the assembly, President Sullivan continued, we have proven that sentient beings can live together in peace and cooperation when they are governed by principles of justice rather than traditions of exploitation. But our work is not finished. She activated a holographic display that showed the outer regions of the galaxy beyond the borders of current civilization. Our exploration fleets have made contact with 3 new species in the past month. The crystalline entities of the Rigel sector, the gaseous intelligences of the Vega Nebula, and the machine collective of the Andromeda approach vector. Each of these species represents a new opportunity to demonstrate the values of our new galactic civilization. Dr. Peter Yang, now serving as Director of First Contact Operations, had developed protocols for approaching new species that were radically different from the old methods. Instead of immediately trying to determine their military capabilities and economic value, human first contact teams focused on understanding their culture, their needs, and their aspirations. "The question we face," President Sullivan said, "is whether these new species will be welcomed into a galaxy that offers them respect and protection, or whether they will encounter the same exploitation and abuse that characterized the old system." The answer was clear from the faces around the assembly hall. Every representative understood that the treatment of new species would be a test of their commitment to the principles they had adopted. Overlord Quintar, now serving as chairman of the Integration Committee, stood to speak. His people, the Thraxi, had been among the most aggressive species under the old system. Now they were leading efforts to help new civilizations join galactic society peacefully. Madam President, the Thraxi delegation moves that we extend full protection and welcome to all three newly contacted species, and that we offer them immediate representation in this assembly regardless of their current level of technological development. The motion was seconded by Prime Clutch Mother Zesnith of the Vorthak, whose species had also undergone a dramatic transformation from predators to protectors. The vote was unanimous. As the session concluded, President Sullivan reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. The galaxy that had once been dominated by fear and exploitation was becoming a place where any species could thrive under the protection of principles rather than the whims of the powerful. Admiral Morrison approached her as the representatives filed out of the assembly hall. "Madam President, we have received a message from the Machine Collective. They want to know if humanity is the species they should be afraid of, or the species they should be grateful for." President Sullivan smiled as she thought about the question. "Admiral, tell them that depends entirely on their intentions toward innocent beings. Those who threaten the weak have every reason to fear us. Those who protect the innocent have every reason to be grateful for our friendship." She looked out the window at the stars beyond Haven, where human ships patrolled the trade routes and maintained the peace that had seemed impossible just 6 months earlier. The galaxy is learning that humanity's greatest strength was never our weapons or our technology. It was our refusal to accept a universe where might makes right and the weak suffer at the hands of the strong. As the sun set over Haven, President Sullivan knew that the transformation was just beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, new species were taking their first steps into space. When they arrived at the borders of galactic civilization, they would find a very different welcome than the one humanity had received 50 years earlier. They would find a galaxy that had learned to value justice over power, cooperation over domination, and protection of the innocent over exploitation of the weak. And if any species chose to threaten that new order, they would discover that humanity had not forgotten how to be dangerous. They had simply chosen to be dangerous.